Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Fintech Power 50 webinar all about digital banking. So the digital banking industry is constantly reinventing itself, continuing its boom of transformation that became an industry standard. From the integration of trending technologies like artificial intelligence to the focus on consumer trust and security, we're today going to really take a good look at the industry, and our panelists are going to provide some valuable insights into the current state of digital banking and the trends that are taking hold. So I'm thrilled today to be here with my fantastic guests. So we have Fernando Gutierrez, Head of Digital Innovation at Uniteller, and Paul Chandler, Sales Director Europe at Compass Plus. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for joining me today. It is an absolute pleasure to have you. I'm so excited for the conversation that we're going to have all about this really fantastic sector in our industry. But first of all, it would be great to give you both the opportunity just to introduce yourselves, let us know the kind of things that you do and about your company. So Fernando, I'm going to let you go first.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So yes, I'm Fernando Gutierrez, as you said, the Head of Digital Product and Innovation at Uniteller Financial Services. We are a cross-border payment company based in the United States mostly, but also we have presence in Central America, South America, and in Asia, particularly in the Philippines. So we offer cross-border payments, seamless cross-border payments, real-time. We carry a wide network of more than 100 countries where we deliver transactions both for P2P or B2B at banks, at cash retailers, cards, wallets, you name it. And we also offer full turnkey solutions for Fintech or also aggregation services for other MSBs. Uniteller is a wholly owned subsidiary of Banorte. Banorte is the second largest bank in Mexico. I started with Banorte, I believe around 21 or 22 years ago. I lost count by now, but I've been at Uniteller for the last 12 years. I joined Uniteller precisely to help the inception of the digital channels. Where we started the digital channels, and I been helping through the evolution of the company on creating precisely APIs, apps, white label solutions for the other institutions. So I leave it for that as now.
Amazing. Thank you, Fernando. And Paul, how about yourself?
Thank you. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. Yes, Paul Chandler, European Sales Director at Compass Plus. Compass Plus has been around for just over 30 years. We're available in 12 international subsidiaries, over 400 financial institutions currently using our platform, Transaxis. Now, Transaxis is available either on-premise as a SaaS model, as a platform model via SaaS. And similarly, we have mobile payments, digital payments, card issuing, cradle to grave in that area. We're a global processor as well, and an acquiring processor, ATM acquiring processor, and a card issuing processor. I think that really sums it up.
Amazing.
So Paul, sorry I'm interrupting, but Paul, you said that your company it's been around for 30 years already?
30 years plus, yeah, indeed.
Oh, plus, okay. Well, actually, I failed to say that actually this year Uniteller is celebrating our 30th anniversary as well. So,
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, we are celebrating.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Amazing. Well, like I said, it's so great to have you both here. I'm really excited for what we're going to be talking about today. So why don't we kick it off with, I guess, a sort of a really high level, broad question. And let's talk about what are the key trends shaping the landscape of digital banking today? What does everything look like right now? So, I mean, Paul, I'll throw that one to you first.
Thank you, Polly. It is a good question, actually, to start with, and I think one which needs us to sort of reflect back on how we managed to get here today. And I'm going to use that awful word, legacy. We speak about legacy systems holding financial institutions back. But frankly, I like to refer to legacy as actually being more Gen 1 or Gen 2 platforms as we know it today. And as we fast forward now 20 years, we're still in that so-called legacy environment, or Gen 1, Gen 2 platforms holding many financial institutions back from where they can actually be. So it's typically these old technology stacks which aren't enabling the players in the industry to actually move forward. So I would say the arrival of what I would call next gen banks, next gen digital banks, virtual banks for all terms and purposes, as we see majoritively today, have had an enormous shift on the industry and brought us to where we are. We can't forget that consumer demand has actually also played its role here. Obviously, since COVID, the adoption of digital apps and digital capabilities is widely more accepted amongst the general public, which I think actually also, I'm on record for saying, it must have escalated this market by a quantum leap by at least 10, 15 years. It would have taken us to get this far had it not been, unfortunately, for that awful period which forced people to embrace technology, snooze or you lose, basically. So that's where we really are today. So what are the trends really? So the trends as I see it fundamentally in this area. And we have great experience, on this specifically, and also a number of white papers in this area as well available to the listeners out there. But from a bank's perspective, it's about improving profitability and sustaining a business model that has to be, in my view, underpinned by what I would call a next gen platform, typically like Transactions from Compass Plus, used by many banks. So that needs to underpin the business model. But fundamentally, mobile cash. Mobile apps and mobile applications, self-service portals clearly dictating. We're going to see blockchain and AI coming into play, certainly in this digital landscape today. So those for me are some of the key trends.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much, Paul. Fernanda, how about you? What kind of trends are you seeing from your experience?
No, absolutely. And I agree with Paul's comments. There are many things that are shaping the industry. Not necessarily all are new. Sometimes we think about these trends as the things that are coming or the future. But in reality, many of them are happening like from 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. It is mostly about evolution, iteration, and adoption. So, because we might be working in many key trends, some of them that Paul mentioned, and some that I'm going to be listed out, but they become a reality until customers really adopt them and facilitates their day-to-day life, right? If not, we are just going to be creating concepts, we're going to be creating products, marketing, but if the customers, they don't really see value on that and adopt, but also as Paul said, it is a win-to-win in a sense that it has to be a win for the consumer, but it has to be a win on the company side, because on the company side, we need to do a lot of investments in order to iterate all of these products, concepts. But at the end, in the long run, if you don't get profitability, it is not going to be sustainable for neither of the parties, right? So I totally agree with that. And we do see a lot of that with startups, with fintechs, with a lot of investments. Great, we see their growth, but sometimes the question is how long are they gonna be surviving, right? And there are many challenges in order to that. Not only customer and value proposition, but there are challenges such as competition, regulation, new technologies, etc., right? But just to again list it out some of the things that I see that are shaping the future of digital banking. One of them is precisely open banking, right? APIs, how banks are able to empower other companies. That relates a little bit what it's called with embedded finance, right? These banks or these financial institutions wanted to try to be more near of the consumers, right? There are retailers that are not necessarily financial institutions that little by little they are pushing wallets. Little by little they are pushing rewards. Little by little they are pushing debit cards, insurance. So if you have a large base of customers, you always wanted to think how else I can sell to them, what else I can offer them, right? And this is where open banking, embedded finance come into picture. Also, I also agree with Paul. Mobile, it's been there forever, but it continues to iterate. It continues to bring more adoption, and even for me, it's the mobile with contactless payments and cash how do we create an ecosystem where everyone can participate, right? Because not necessarily all of them are technology savvy, not necessarily across the world people have whatever is needed to open an account. So we need to create I call it a hybrid ecosystem where digital and cash may combine to make life of people easier, right? So I leave it as that for now. Maybe there are many other trends shaping the future, but we can go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think you've both raised some really key points here, and I guess how you've both touched on it briefly already, but how have things evolved over the past, say, 5 years or so? I think obviously going back to 2020 and the COVID pandemic and how that kind of really pushed everything to digital, and then the follow on from that in the following years. How have things really changed and grown? I mean, Fernando, we'll go back to you for that one first.
Yes. I think things that have evolved, precisely talking about again about trends that are shaping the future, is precisely AI, right? AI was probably invented 5 years ago, but how does it evolve? With improvement, investment, acceleration, increase, adoption, even though I believe that there's still a huge opportunity for companies to adopt AI, right? Because when we see AI, mostly we talk about the big tech companies, right? Like the Metas of the world, the Googles, I don't know, some other companies doing big investments on that. Recently, OpenAI, I think that was a news that happened last week or a few days. I don't know if you heard that OpenAI had received one of the largest investment from VCs. I mean, the largest investment from a VC, and now their value, I don't recall the figure, but a lot of money, right? So, because companies believe that what is going to be evolving is precisely the usage of AI more and more and more integrated, right? Sometimes we don't use AI on a day to day, but we should and we might and we need to do that, right? We need to try to look more for tools that are going to help to do our life easier. So I think that evolving is just about accelerate, increase, and adopt. For me, that's what
Yeah,
I think.
that's really interesting. Paul, how about you? Where have things evolved for you over the past 5 years?
Yes, substantially, I think, over the last 5 years for sure. I've always been an advocate that we as consumers actually are king, and we dictate, what happens, and we dictate, or clearly what's happening in the banking industry in many ways, so that they follow us as opposed to us being driven by them. So digital banks have evolved substantially, clearly over the last 5 years, and I liken it to my time as in the days of the paperless office, which frankly never materialized as such, but the notion is still, very relevant. So the availability of cutting edge technologies, associated third party banking apps, for example, the use of next gen platforms enabling the rapid address of consumer demands, national trends with the ability to take those payment models up and down when the consumer fad no longer dictates that payment model is required. I mean that's a significant step change as where we were 5 years ago, all facilitated through digital banking. So banking services have been completely reshaped by the digital banking era, and we as consumers can't get enough of it as usual. So the payments industry remains, I think, to that extent, a very exciting sector, and as long as it remains driven by consumers.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Paul. And I guess, I mean, is digital banking still on the rise, do you think, or have we kind of seen a bit of a plateau of interest, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's definitely still on the rise for sure. And this growth is not only because of consumer demand for, I would say, secure, fast, intuitive digital banking, but also because many FIs came under pressure to address old technology stacks. They had to reinvest, and or simply give up, and giving up was clearly never on the books or never an option. So investments from banks are high, and they're looking for some return on investment at some stage, and that can only be facilitated by delivering clearly the right apps for us as consumers, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Fernando, do you have anything to add on that one? Do you think
No,
digital banking is not going?
totally. For me, when I see this question, right in my mind, the answer is yes, totally. It is on the rise. There is tons of things to do yet, and I agree with Paul. Banks, precisely being banks, posed a very big challenge on moving generation one, generation two of technologies into digital platforms. Right, you cannot utilize that as a cornerstone for your digital platform because it's going to be very heavy. It's not going to adapt to consumer needs. So I see some or most of these big banks creating new digital bank from scratch, right? They with new technologies, everything on iCloud, on cloud services. Because if you try to adapt what you have to what is required now, you're going to create a monster that is going to be very difficult to sustain. So, but the answer is totally it's on the rise. There are still many challenges to do, and precisely automation and the utilization of AI is going to help precisely that rise and continue the adoption and usage of these platforms, so for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that leads me really nicely onto my next question, which is looking at what are the main challenges for digital banks seeing in the current sort of state of the landscape. I mean, Fernando, do you want to pick back up on that one there?
Absolutely. So yeah, thinking about challenges and things that I see happening more and more because I used to see that challenges probably 6 years ago, and they are the same challenges, but now even a little bit more complicated. And one of them is precisely regulation. So regulation is something that it's creating some complexities for banks, let's say, especially for neobanks or bank providers, banking as a service. So these banks create this division of banking as a service. They try to be sponsors of other financial institutions, fintechs, startups. But whenever they try to do business and whenever they do due diligence, they see many complexities. And precisely because regulators are being very tough on these banks, right? Changing the policies on how do you do KYC, what do you require to do KYC, adjusting the velocity. Sometimes it creates a difficulty between the balance of customer experience and compliance and fraud prevention, right? So even regulators are posing these challenges for the banks. And definitely we need to work more with regulators in order for them to understand how these new trends are adopting and how they can be on board on that. And the other big challenge that I have, and again, it is not new, it's been there forever, but I see more and more precisely is cybersecurity, right? Companies need to keep investing in cybersecurity. They need to continue modernize their technology stacks, their firewalls, the way that they work, participate, communicate on everything that relates to cybersecurity. And precisely whenever you try to do business with another institution, let's say that you wanted to partner with a bank, with a fintech, with a neobank, etc., and let's say, okay, let's do business, let's do a business model, let's do our due diligence. And now a big part of that due diligence is precisely on IT. There is very heavy questionnaires and things that we need to do in order to make sure that we are doing business with a company that has a good cybersecurity policy. So those are the two challenges that I see mostly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Paul, how about you? What are the challenges that you're seeing?
Well, I concur totally with Fernando with regards to regulatory challenges and similarly cybersecurity clearly and all the risk associated with this. I think fintech disruption and therefore the increased competition, good for us as consumers, makes it tough for the industry for sure, staying ahead of the curve and so forth. The current economic climate on a global level is disrupting and creates a challenge as such. I'd also like to reach out to mention maybe talent acquisition, because talent acquisition within the workforce is paramount. If you've got a great team, you need to hang on to it, and certainly more focus on that. And another one is ultimately is don't forget the value proposition, the consumer value proposition. Bearing in mind that we are driving this, we want it and we want it now. Maybe not you and I, but certainly our kids do. That's for sure. And with that in mind, I think digital banking, underpins that ethos wonderfully. So it's the differentiation of that value proposition. That's the main challenge, one of the main challenges as well.
Absolutely. I wanted to call out, Paul, what you said precisely. You got me thinking about talent retention and talent acquisition. It is something that, due to the pandemic, everyone is moving around. Now, many of the workforce continues to have a little bit of let me say a saying on this, and sometimes they don't they wanted to work on their own, and many of these guys poise a very, very good talents, and you need to adapt wherever they are demanding, and this is definitely also a challenge that not only in digital banking, but I guess everywhere it's happening. So I wanted to call out that, Paul, very on point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I guess where then, thinking again about sort of the state of the current industry, where is digital banking falling behind? Are there any gaps in kind of the offerings and kind of what we think about when we think about digital banking? Paul, I'll throw that one back to you.
Yeah, I mean, is digital banking falling behind? I don't think it is. It can only, in many regards, it can only move forward, onwards and upwards, so to speak. But the optimization of customer experience, I think, is notable. We have many digital deployments on our Transaxis platform internationally, and the majority of feedback, if there is any lacking, it's really about how you address the customer service issues. And I think there's a statistic out there that 64% of customers would say that the lack of immediate service or human customer support is a major problem for them even making a decision to go solely over to a digital environment, and in some cases prefer to walk back up to the high street branch. And we all know for many that's not an option anymore. Or certainly a diminishing option, but certainly in today's world. So video banking support with genuine human interaction along with AI tools, I think, will remain a game changer for digital banks. And as always, get the support right, and you're on your way to a customer loyalty and actually achieving what you set out to achieve.
Yeah, amazing. And Fernando, how about you? Any gaps that you're seeing in the current landscape?
Yes, a couple of them, and again, I was reflecting on what Paul said, and precisely on the velocity where you capture customer data and customer feedback, and the velocity on how you adapt that and put it back to the product and put it back to the value proposition. Is that velocity which is going to give you the advantage that you need, and to be ahead of the curve, right? And the other one, at least for me, again, it's regulation. As we know, at Uniteller, we work on cross-border payments, P2P and B2B, but mostly P2P. Or at least I wanted to address the person-to-person type of international remittance, where sometimes KYC it's a challenge. It's sometimes it's falling behind because precisely since regulation is tough on regulation in KYC, sometimes it doesn't allow to differentiate the good guys versus the bad guys. And being a migrant, sometimes, I mean, you don't need to be a citizen, you don't need to be, you can send money even being a migrant, but how to identify that with not being too strict with the KYC. This is something that I feel it's falling behind sometimes at least in the industry that we participate. Probably, Paul, I don't know if you agree that sometimes happen with digital banking in Europe, in some other places, right? That barrier that sometimes not everyone is able to go and open an account or a digital account, right? So I think those are the two things where probably digital banking might be falling behind.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And actually, I'd love to touch on that a little bit more, Fernando, when it comes to kind of thinking about financial inclusion and accessibility and how digital banking is working for underserved and underbanked populations. I mean, do you think that digital banking and digital banks helped you address those issues? Or, like you say, are we still seeing a few gaps in that?
I think I still will see a few gaps. There are banks with a little bit more appetite to be open, to do business with that, but even they continue to adjust their policy. Sometimes we have worked with banks that one day they say, yes, okay, this is our policies to do KYC, to accept this, we accept this type of identifications, or we accept the people from these regions or this and that, and probably 6 months later, 1 year later, because they had a bad time with regulators, they adjust their policies, and then probably it changes your value proposition, right? Because you were targeting certain individuals, and now you're just going to make things difficult for them, right? So it depends. Some banks again have more appetite for that. Some others are exiting some type of business, as we see. But that's my point of view, Pauline.
That's really interesting. And Paul, how about you? What do you think on the whole sort of financial inclusion and accessibility when it comes to digital banking? Are digital banks addressing the issues?
Yeah, I think I generally believe they are in many respects. If we reflect on what the mainstream banks did, or they actually did little or nothing to address financial inclusion. It was the main launch of digital banking services in the UK that saw the change account. I'll say specifically the change account because it was an account going back to early 2000, offering diverse payment services for the underserved and unbanked in the United Kingdom. A game changer, and really saw the launch of digital banking services for the first time. And that was launched on the premise that many unbanked and underserved individuals in that demographic have access to mobile phones. So digital banks, in many respects, since that period, have now carved out a market for themselves here with an abundance of ecosystem apps designed specifically and aimed at this demographic, such as ID verification tools, third-party services that can be accessed, Department of Works and Pensions, and so forth, with payments being made directly to those accounts. So basically, all this again is underpinned by next gen technology. So you can understand why legacy or Gen 1, Gen 2 platforms with those banks all that time ago couldn't achieve this. But I think it's been a significant learning curve. But digital banking services have really heralded a new dawn for the underbanked and financial inclusion for sure.
That's really interesting. Thank you. And I think, throughout this webinar, we've kind of touched on the current state of everything. We've touched on, the legacy systems as we were talking about before and how that's transformed into the landscape. So very quickly, just before we come to a close, it'd be great to look at the future of digital banking and kind of where that industry is going. What do you predict will be shaping this future as we move into it, I guess? I mean, Paul, I'll come back to you for that one. Where do you see this sector going?
Well, again, I'm going to say it at the fear of overstating it, but the consumer, in my view, will continue to dictate the future of digital banking, and this will shape the digital banking industry and will continue to shape it for sure. However, the value proposition is key to success, along with remaining competitive, addressing consumers' needs, and providing best-in-class digital banking support. Things that we touched on, all underpinned obviously by next-gen payment platforms such as our platform, Transaxis.
Fantastic. And Fernando, how about you? Where do you predict the future will be heading?
Yeah, continue putting the customer at the center of the product innovation, design and product design, not only for the front end UX UI point of view, but also from the back end architecture of our services in order to be able to provide that speed or that need that customers need. Also I see in the future working more with AI. Definitely, I think AI is going to help us do better personalization of services, better personalization of value proposition. not necessarily all sides fits all, and the way that companies adapt the value proposition to each one of the customers is going to help drive the future of these companies. And I also think that the embedded finance, little by little, not only the banks are going to be, and actually it's happening now, but little by little, more and more, the financial services are going to be provided by many other institutions, right? Like retailers, brick and mortar, some other companies, you name it, right? So once you have a good customer base, you would like to offer them more services and financial services as well, to be able to, to give value, to give rewards, to give better pricing, and that's going to be driving the future of digital banking. But again, not precisely only by banks, but by many fintechs, neobanks, and other type of institutions, not necessarily bankings or banks. Yep.
Amazing. Thank you both. Well, unfortunately, that does bring us to the end of our conversation today. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you both here sharing your incredible insights. And just a note to our online audience, of course, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fantastic to have you here. And if you want to hear more about the Power 50, you can head on over to thepower50.com. And if you want to follow along anything that we've spoken about today in this conversation, head on over to Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and use the hashtag FP50 Digital Banking 2024. But Paul, Fernando, again, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you, and hopefully we will see you again soon.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon.